Hello everyone and welcome back to the First American Chess Congress, the good stuff. We are back at the fourth game between Paul Morphy and Louis Paulsen. So after 3 games, the result is even score. First game went to Morphy, then that draw where Morphy reversed the move order, and then he lost to Louis Paulsen. His first loss in the First American Chess Congress. Is it his last? We'll just have to watch it till the end and see. Here now he has the white pieces. So without further ado, let's check it out. And thank you all for joining the Leech's Team Arena today. Sorry it didn't work out. Leech's service crashed, but we'll do it better next time, hopefully. So getting to the game, Morphy opens with e4 and Paulsen replies with c5. He goes for the Sicilian defense with knight to f3, e6, and now d4. Sorry about that. C captures on d4, of course. We have knight captures and bishop to c5 now, going after the knight. And now, instead of knight b3, first bishop to e3, just defending, and the queen to b6 now, putting more pressure here. Also threatening the pawn here, but here Morphy goes knight to b5, and here he's offering bishop captures on e3 for Paulsen to win a pawn. However, if you go after this, captures, and captures, Morphy blocks, you're kind of in trouble here. There's no clear way on how to defend all of the checks. For example, you could go king d8, but then you lose castling privileges, and white just continues, and he's very happy to give up his pawn for such a game. Of course, there are even crazier ideas like queen captures, and then check, you pick up the queen. But okay, knight to f6 by Paulsen, and bishop captures on c5. Now Morphy eliminates the bishops, queen captures, and knight to d6 check. And it is as of move 8 that this position has never been reached again. The black king is in check, you have to do something, king to e7. And this is, there are lines even today that are played that allow this check where king goes to e7, and it's actually an okay position for black, and such is this one here. We have knight captures here, as the knight was now under attack, so rook captures, developing the rook, and now bishop to d3. Morphy continues development. And knight to c6. Paulsen does the same. We have castles, and now, as Morphy already said that he will castle kingside, Paulsen doesn't have a kingside castle, so he starts marching his pawns forward. We have h5. Morphy continues with the development, knight d2, and now h4. Not wanting to allow h3, Morphy pushes h3 himself, and now g5. It is Paulsen who's coming after Morphy this game. With a3, Morphy says, nothing really going on here, I'm just going to play a pawn move. And indeed, if g4, you can just capture it. The queen also guards g4. So first, Paulsen prepares it. And now b4 first. You get rid of the queen. Queen to b6, and now knight to c6. Again, with an attack on the queen, improving the position of your knight. Queen back to c7, all the way back. And now f3, just strengthening g4 here. So Paulsen starts improving the position of his pieces, knight to e5, and Morphy trades with knight captures, queen captures, and now queen to d2, preparing to bust open the position with f4. Rook to g7, with ideas of maybe doubling rooks on the g file, and rook a to d1 now. If the bishop moves, and for example this knight isn't here, maybe ideas like queen captures and d7 will be here. So rook to d8, Paulsen defends the d7 pawn, and queen to f2 now. Still, f4 is an option, but also you're just threatening to pick up the a7 pawn. We have b6 by Paulsen defending, and now f4. Asking Paulsen, what do you do here? We have captures on f4, Morphy recaptures, now offers a queen trade, and now queen to g5. Paulsen says, yes, let's trade queens, but I want to trade queens on g5 so I can just double nicely here on the g file. Morphy says, no thank you. Rook to f2, also defending checkmate, as there was the threat of checkmate. And now queen captures on f4 by Paulsen. We have rook captures on f4 and rook d to g8. Now, not defending the h4 pawn, but rather going for a counterattack. So rook d2, Morphy defends it, and now rook to h8. Paulsen also defends his h4 pawn, and now e5 by Morphy. E5 is maybe a bit of a suspicious advancement of the pawn, but he will keep d6 and f6 under control, so black will not be able to use these pawns. So knight to d5 with an attack on the rook, rook to d4. Again, the two rooks will put some pressure on the d7 pawn if c4 is played. So first f6, it's time to get rid of this e5 pawn. E captures on f6 with check, knight captures, and now we have rook to c4. A rook to c4, hoping to get rook to c7 in. There are no discoveries here with the two rooks going after, as the knight defends the d7 pawn now, so there's no point. Rook c4, hoping to get rook to c7 in, but king to d8. Paulsen prevents it, and now a4. Morphy continues pushing, and the material is equal. One difference that is notable, that Paulsen has 2 pawns in the center of the board, whereas Morphy doesn't, and Morphy has 2-to-1 advantage on the king side. So it's a bit of a different position, but all in all, with perfect play, neither player shouldn't be able to do anything about it. So knight to d5 by Paulsen, and now bishop to e4. The bishop will nicely defend the g2 pawn, and also it's on a beautiful diagonal here. We have knight back to c7. And now comes a bishop back to f3. And finally d5 by Paulsen. We have rook to c6 now, putting pressure on the e6 pawn here, and now comes rook to d7, preparing to push the d pawn. Bishop to g4, putting pressure on the e6 pawn now, and rook to h6, defending it. Morphy continues piling up on the e6 pawn, but king to e7. And there really is no good way to take advantage of this. So first, king to h2. Morphy now prepares g3. He wants to get rid of Paulsen's h-pawn, and he wants to create a pass pawn on the king side so he can start pushing it. King to f7, and now g3, of course, as planned. H captures, king captures, and rook to e7. Now unpinning, now the e-pawn can also move, as the bishop no longer threatens to pick up the rook. We have h4, Morphy continues pushing the pawn, and knight to e8 now, remaneuvering the knight. We have h5 by Morphy, and knight to f6 now, with the threat of just knight captures here to get rid of the pawn. So what was Morphy's idea here? His idea was rook captures on e6. He trades his passed h-pawn for the very strong central pawn. We have rook captures, bishop captures with check, king to g7, and now bishop back to g4, getting the bishop out of the way. But now you've freed the e7 square for the rook. So not much you can do here. You have to go for the pawn. Knight captures on h5. We have bishop captures, and rook to e7 check now. King f6 and rook captures on a7. And after all of this, after some 47 moves, Morphy is now up a pawn in a rook's endgame. So king e5, Paulsen with a bit more active king, and rook to a6 now, going after this pawn as well. We have rook to g5 check, king f3, rook f5 check, king to e2, not allowing d4 to come with check, and now b5, saying that, okay, I'm going to lose the pawn either way, so maybe just let's double up Morphy's pawns here. And although Morphy can play a5, capturing here is even better. There are no dangers here. So rook to f4, going after Morphy's b4 pawn, but now c3. And here Paulsen goes for d4. And now you're Morphy here. Feel free to pause the video. How do you win this endgame? Well, I give you a couple of seconds. I'm sure you don't need a lot of seconds, but you know, have some if you need. So for those of you who decided on b6, that's insufficient. For example, if b6 captures here, you're going to push b7, rook captures here, and there is no way to promote your pawn. This is only a draw. And for those of you who decided to advance the pawn, that is the way to victory, so congratulations. And now the connected pass pawns are simply too strong. Here, rook to h4 was played by Paulsen, but now c5. We have rook to h2 check, king d3. Now comes a series of checks by Paulsen, rook h3 check, king c2, rook h2 check, king to b3, and rook h3 check. Morphy hides, king to a4, and now if you go d3, then rook to d6, you are not doing anything with that d pawn. So Paulsen goes rook to d5 first, but still rook to d6 with check. We have king to c4, and now c6. Morphy starts pushing the passed pawn. We have rook to h1. Morphy has to be careful. If something like c7, then rook to a1 is mate. You don't want to lose a game like this. So Morphy could go for king a5 here, hide the king on b6, promote the c pawn, and it's game over. But here, Morphy, I guess, started to feel a little bit better after that draw in round 2 and the loss in round 3. So he decided to show off a little bit. He played rook captures on d4. I mean, who could blame him? King captures, and only now c7. So Paulsen, of course, played rook to h8. We have b6 by Morphy, and now again king to c4, where he's checking if Morphy is paying attention or something. Maybe if king a5, then you can again deliver rook to a8 checkmate. But here Morphy just of course played b7, and it was in this position that Louis Paulsen resigned the game. So game 4 of their matchup in the 1857 First American Chess Congress goes to Paul Morphy. Here of course you resign because any move black plays, it's just mate, unless you want to try it again with rook to h1 to deliver checkmate here, and then maybe Morphy, instead of bringing the queen out with check, brings out the queen out here, and then you are happy to deliver checkmate. So it could be an attempt, but Paulsen says, yeah, we're just going to resign here. So yeah, that's game 4 of their 1857 finals of the First American Chess Congress. I do hope you enjoyed it. A bit of a different game. It was actually Paulsen who came aggressively for Morphy. Morphy defended, and then he somehow was able to win a pawn, and then he managed to win an endgame, and the game lasted for 64 moves. I don't have the actual hours how long this game lasted, but I do know that Paulsen again took a lot of time for his moves, but he did so in every game. So unless it's like incredibly long thing, I'm not probably going to mention that all that much. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for game 5 of their match. I would like to thank Imost, Zhelyash Kochachev, Doug McNabb, Kari Keskinen, and Kevin Thorne for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and so on. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.